Today on the episode, we are going to unpack how dental hygienists practice in 5 other countries. This is also important for helping us protect our profession here in the US. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Grow RDH podcast. My name is Katie and I am a dental hygienist from South Dakota. On this podcast, we talk all about dental hygiene and professionalism and protecting our licenses and CE, all of the above. So today we are continuing the month of June. The theme for June is advocacy. This has a lot to do with what's going on politically in our nation in terms of dental hygiene and the regulation, the delegation of duties, all of the key hot topics. And so I just thought that the month of June should be devoted to advocacy and what advocacy looks like. Last week we talked about ways to get involved and things that you're probably already doing that are advocacy that you don't even realize. And today we're going to do a global glimpse. This is looking at dental hygiene in other countries. We're going to be covering 5 countries today. We're going to be covering the United Kingdom, Canada, Sweden, Australia, and New Zealand. So let's start with the UK. In the UK, it was kind of hard to get clarification on some of these things. I was reading that dental hygienists are also called dental care professionals. So I have notes for today because I obviously had to do a lot of research on this. If you have any comments, if you've worked in these countries and know more about this, please comment down below and correct anything I got wrong. But what I could find from the UK was that dental hygienists are called dental care professionals, and they are regulated under the General Dental Council. As far back as 2013, dental hygienists in the UK can see patients under direct access, which means there's no dental prescription needed for being a patient of record. So how I took that to mean is you can see a patient no matter what and do dental hygiene services without a prescription. They're also able to prescribe high strength fluoride and local anesthetic. So that means supply and administer them. So that is another thing that they are allowed to do. In terms of limitations though, they face a lot of the things that dental hygienists in the US face. They cannot fully diagnose or write comprehensive treatment plans. This scope varies by practices and indemnity rules. And I found this interesting that there was a survey done in 2025 that showed 70% of UK dental hygienists almost never fully utilize their scope of practice, which I would love to do a study or find a similar study of that in the US. I wonder how many hygienists are actually being underutilized. It would be a very interesting aspect of this current problem that we're having. How many hygienists are not being utilized to their full scope? I know in my place of work, we are not utilized to our full scope, and that's due to dentists not wanting us to do certain services. So it's interesting. I would love to do a survey like that. So if you're interested in that as well and we want to collaborate, reach out. So overall, to summarize, in the UK, it sounds like there's a strong model of structured autonomy, right? They can practice without prescriptive authority, being a patient of record, but it sounds like underuse is the biggest hurdle. And again, that sounds a lot similar to the US. Next, we're going to talk about Canada. Canada is definitely a country where they are pioneering independent practice. So the research that I was doing, I found that in Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec, dental hygienists can operate under independent practice, meaning they can own their own clinic, they can have their own patients, and there's a referral process that they work with, similar to Colorado, in which they are allowed to do this without dentist supervision. Obviously, they have a very thorough referral process that they work with dentists on, but they are allowed to do that. Specifically in Alberta, Alberta's scope includes taking x-rays, diagnosing, prescribing administration of meds, doing local anesthetic, all of those things without direct supervision from a dentist. Canada also has a few limitations. Limitations include startup costs and business management, right? That is not something that a hygienist is used to doing. And so as we open up those scopes, being able to kind of get get experience, education on business management would be important. The scope still does vary by province. And so I'm not sure which provinces. I didn't dig too deep into each individual province, but it does look like that it does vary, just like the US, province to province. So if you wanted to move into a different province, you would definitely have to check the local scope of practice in that province, just like we in the US do here in state to state. Next, we're going to talk about Australia. I specifically was interested in Australia and New Zealand because of their pioneering work in the therapy model. So I definitely wanted to include both. I know New Zealand was one of the first countries to really recognize dental therapists, and that is a model that we utilize a lot in the US in certain states. So for Australia, they are registered and their registration requires a bachelor's level training. So when they say that bachelor's is entry level, they really mean it. The ability to practice independently occurs in many settings. They can work in community settings or public health settings without a dentist on site. Many of them are also dual trained as oral health therapists, meaning they can provide children's restorative care. I'm not sure to what level. Again, I didn't dive too deep into this, but they can get trained as an oral health therapist and also provide children's restorative work. Limitations are pretty similar to other countries. The scope varies by state or territory. So they still have local models and referral models that still apply, and it's important for you, if you're going to work in Australia, to make sure you understand your local requirements and not just the country's requirements. So to summarize, in Australia, there's a unified national register with strong autonomy, though regional variability does still exist. So high autonomy still. Next is New Zealand. And again, this was the powerhouse in the therapy model. And this also has bachelor level training. This is regulated by the Dental Council of New Zealand. And both hygienists and oral therapists, just like in Australia, can practice without direct supervision. They are very prominent in public health, aged care, and rural outreach. Their scope does include assessment and diagnosis, which also then involves treatment planning, non-surgical care, very autonomous when it comes to the scope of practice and what they can do. Some limitations exist. They do need referral and or prescriptive authority with a dentist when it comes to radiographs and advanced fluoride. So they don't have full prescribing rights, but in terms of diagnosis, they can classify perio, they can make a treatment plan, and it is ever evolving. So because they were the first pioneers of therapy, I believe that in time, New Zealand will definitely be a country to watch when it comes to having full autonomy for dental hygiene. Finally is Sweden. Sweden dental hygienists are licensed by the National Board of Health and Welfare, and it does require a university diploma. I couldn't find whether or not it's an associate's or a bachelor's. I don't know if it's just different, but in my research, I couldn't find to what level. So maybe their levels are different. But if you know, put it down in the comments. Dental hygienists in Sweden can also diagnose, just like Australia, just like New Zealand. They can diagnose periodontal conditions. They can fully take radiographs and formulate treatment plans. They can take radiographs, they can formulate treatment plans, and they can administer local anesthesia. And they really play a primary central role in public health care. They can own independent clinics and they can set their own fees for reimbursement, which is, again, huge when it comes to autonomy. Here were some limitations I found in terms of Sweden. One is that they cannot perform restorative treatment. And they're still dependent on the dentist for the x-ray equipment. So I don't know if that meant that the x-ray units had to be registered and monitored through a dental office, is kind of what I got there. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. So I'm assuming it means that the radiographic equipment has to be registered by the dentist. Another limitation in Sweden is that it's a high educational bar, meaning the fees associated with becoming a dental hygienist are very high. So that might be a limitation when it comes to actually going to dental hygiene school. And I've read a little bit on that it's hard to get into Sweden if you are an international provider. So me, as a hygienist from the US, it would be very difficult, lots of hoops, probably very expensive to then go and get a license in Sweden. So summary for Sweden is that there's high autonomy and they're very prevention oriented, but there are some structural boundaries and access limitations. So that is Sweden in a nutshell. So when it comes to comparing that to the US, it sounds like there are a lot of models that we can look to really advance and show in other models the good that a dental hygienist can do. It sounds very similar in the UK to the US. They're still very much part of that team-based model. They are very kind of still highly dependent on a dentist, right? They can't fully diagnose just like we can't. And their direct access is still very limited. But again, they're very, very similar to us. Compare that to Canada, New Zealand, and Sweden, who are way on the other side of the spectrum, seem very autonomous. And then it kind of seems like Australia is somewhere in the middle, right? They're almost like a hybrid between like New Zealand and us. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because data tells a story, right? Those are countries that we can look to when we're looking at the safety and the regulatory models that work. We can look to other countries to get that data. So if you're facing legislation that might be limiting or minimizing the autonomy of a dental hygienist, look to other countries, look to these countries and look at the models. Find data, find public health data in these countries to show that safety does exist. And if we want to do that, we can also do it in other states in the US, right? If you want to be looking at a model like Colorado, reach out to Colorado's leaders and get data from them. Get the information that you can show, right? Data speaks volumes. Anecdotal stories and just, saying there's a need or saying that something is safe doesn't go as far as when you look at some of these models and you see that, all of these good things have happened because dental hygienists were given more autonomy. It also shows that bachelor's level as entry level is necessary to reach a certain level of autonomy, right? On the job training does not allow for enough expertise and enough experience to work and meet the standards of other models. We look at other professions, other healthcare professions, right? Nursing and medicine, and having specialized training and specialized hours is hands down the safest way to regulate a profession. So looking to on-the-job training for some of these things does not follow this global standard, right? The global standard requires education, registration, and oversight and autonomy and able to meet access to care demands. So if you are in one of these countries and you are listening to me today, please down in the comments, share your experiences. What did you love about the country you are in? What limitations do you run across? Did I get it right? Did I get anything wrong? Please, in the comments, share your experience with us. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you listening. Please like, share, subscribe, share with the other dental hygiene leaders in your state. And hopefully this will inspire you to be looking for data, looking for models that will work in your state and use the data and the pre-existing models to paint a picture of need. The next 2 weeks of June, we are also going to be talking about advocacy. I have an exciting interview coming up. And I also am going to be doing a episode on power partnerships. If you have a dentist that supports you and gives you autonomy, please reach out and share your story with me. I'm going to be hopefully reading stories of inspiration about dentists and how we can collaborate and build bridges versus all of this negative stuff that's going on. So I really want to support the positive relationships. Please reach out, katie@growrdh.org, and share your story if I can share it on the pod. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you next Friday.